right, welcome back. And you're still watching Daybreak on this 15th day of May 2023. And I want us to now focus on what the president was speaking about yesterday, but begin from where he ended, that is close to the end of that conversation when he was speaking about appointments in the public sector, and he went ahead to give an example. Listen.
Appointed General Ogola. General Ogola is among the people who went to Bomas to try and overturn my victory. Do you know that? But because when I looked at his CV, he was the best person to be general. I called him and I sat him down. I told him, my friend, you went to Bomas to try and overturn my victory. But because you are the best person to be general, I'm going to give you the job. That is how it works with me. I had the opportunity. I could have appointed anybody. I had, I think, 10 choices. I didn't have to. You know, there are people who say, oh, you know, William Ruto appointed Ogola because he was the deputy CDF. That's not the case. I made the decision consciously. And I made the decision against the advice of many people. Many people told me, you should not give this, you should not reward this kind of behavior. I'm also conscious that since independence, there is nobody from Nyanza who has ever been CDF. And it also played in my mind that I don't want a situation where a whole community think they cannot occupy a certain office. So many things that are part of my system overweighed the mistake he had done.
Okay. All right, that's the president, almost unprovoked really, to speak about the appointment of the Chief of Defense Forces. And I will begin with you, Honorable Koech, Chairman of Defense Committee, the National Assembly. Did it have to get to this point? And what does this now do to the new CDF in the public perception in this country?
I think he did it right, Sam. Sometimes it's good to speak about something so that people also understand the perspective. Looking at how questions were coming in, let me first say this, that many out in the public and even within the military circles, there were gossips of why General Ogola would not have succeeded General Kibochi. It is prudent upon the president to explain, and of course the jury is still out there of whether General Ogola participated in trying to impeach the presidency of William Ruto. Now, the question has come in to the president and is being confronted by this particular situation of having to pick General Ogola. He has to tell the country why he thinks that it is proper for General Ogola to be the CDF. Number one, it tells you that this is a president who has zero fear because he's actually having General Ogola in an extremely sensitive position. As a CIC and General Ogola being the CDF, it tells you that he feels nothing. He's looked at General Ogola as a person, first of all, who has a brilliant military career. Personally, I've sat with General Ogola and he explained to me how he's risen to that position. And if you look at his CV, say for that particular incident, General Ogola has had an extremely distinguished service in the military. He's a respectable person, a very professional person, and he deserves that position. The president was saying in the civil service, it doesn't matter for him who is given what. He looks, first of all, at what you can deliver as a person. So the president, in my view, was trying to explain to the public that even though there are still these questions lingering about whether it was fit for him to have picked General Ogola, and if General Ogola was fit to be the CDF, he did not look at, first of all, his past and the small mistake that had happened in Bomas. He looked at General Ogola as what he was going to do to this country and his service before to this nation. And I think that is at that point where he arrived that it was perfect to pick on him. And you know, this debate came amongst the debate of recent appointments in the civil service. And I've seen some people even make complaints, particularly making fun of my community, the Kalenjin community. I've seen some tweets running around. Let me tell you, Sam, and pick this for me. For 22 years, my community has deliberately, by successive regimes, been exited from the public service. No one has complained, and sometimes ostensibly because of trumped-up charges of corruption, okay? So you find people being exited. In fact, in 2000, when President Kibaki came in, 7,000 from my community employees were exited from the public service. It is unfair, and no one complained then. You looked at last regime of President Uhuru Kenyatta. So many people, their careers were totally destroyed because they were fighting William Ruto, but they were using individuals in high offices from my community to send them out. So you'll find, Kenya Power, they will bring on charges, some petty charges, get arrested on Friday, and immediately you're charged. You're told, first of all, because you're under investigation, you go home. That is exactly what happened to Kenya Pipeline. That is exactly what happened to, so many other places and professionals that their profession was cut short because of this petty, toxic politics of yesteryears. So no one complained at that time. In fact, I did not understand. I saw it the other day, the Anglican, what is his name, Ole Sapit, coming out strongly. It is not in the space of the church to speak about what happens in public service. That is a space of politicians to critique and look at the government objectively. In fact, I was seeing how many people are congratulating the new Kenya Power MD. Look at his CV against the name, and you will realize that this guy really deserves to have been there. In fact, he ought to have been there way ages ago. He has worked so hard. The new MD of Ketraco, Mativo, has even attested to the fact that this guy is super professional in the field, in the energy sector. So that is in that context that he was saying. Number two, the president went further to explain that I have not been tribal. In fact, if you are talking like, I remember a journalist asked him about the shareholding of what the deputy president has been saying. And he went further to say, he personally appointed from 42 counties his permanent secretaries, and went further. On the CAS's list, he has picked from 45 counties. That is the face of the country.
All right. What do you make of that, Okango? Because, yes, the transition happened. I think it was at the start of this month at the KDF. Now the president said what he said, but also in the bigger question of Kenyans expressing concerns about the people that are getting appointed to public office. If you look at the data, it's majorly they come from, if it's not Mount Kenya, it's from the Rift Valley. What do you make of that, even as it appears like it's an opportunity now to heal or to treat that wound that the Rift Valley has suffered for the past 20 years or so, as Nelson Koech says?
Very accurate observation, Sam. Very accurate observation. But maybe I'll be very careful because, we are avoiding to display conduct and becoming like what Gagusha was doing, because we are in the spirit of bipartisan talks, and we have demonstrated utmost good faith and build confidence. So what Gagusha was saying about Raila Odinga, he cannot speak for Raila Odinga while I'm seated on this table. Number two, we know for sure that in appointing public officers, there are three criteria that must be applied: personal integrity, competency, and suitability. And that is something that even Honorable William Ruto knows. You are accurate when you say that in the recent past, we have seen discussions on social media of appointments that are skewed, particularly towards one or two communities. And Kenyans have been asking themselves, are there other community members who are suitable, capable, and competent, and even with personal integrity, to fill those offices? The answer is yes. But I can tell you the issue of General Ogola, which I am very disappointed that it's a discussion in the military ranks that had to find itself in a TV debate with the Honorable Ruto, because if indeed, this is my personal view as Okango now, if indeed the general had issues, then he should have been court-martialed. If indeed the general was not having personal integrity, he should have not been appointed. Having laid that background, I think that it is important for all Kenyans, and this is where I disagree with the Honorable Koech, when he says that Ole Sapit should not get into that space and discuss the issues of public appointment. Right. Ole Sapit is a Kenyan. Is a religious leader. Like any other Kenyans and other leaders, whether political, religious, or social, we have a duty to ensure that we speak the truth. And the truth is that there has been accurate observation that particular community has been enjoying appointment from public appointment from the current regime, whether they are compensating for the loss or not. But I think it is important to observe the constitutional principle that demands of appointment based on the basis of suitability, competency, and personal integrity. I agree. It could be possible that the community appointments from those regions are having personal integrity, they are competent, they are suitable, but it's also possible that there are others who are equally competent. And therefore, when Honorable Ruto last evening in his interview said that even one of the names that was brought before him, he just realized that what was his, classmate. It is true. But how about in the spirit of uniting this country and looking at it from the point that every Kenyan has a right to get some of this opportunity? Why don't we now be, bold enough and patriotic enough to ensure that in doing so, we display the face of Kenya in this appointment, particularly the senior appointments that would require, service to the people. So, to finish this, I'm just saying that I am very uncomfortable discussing the issue of CDF Ogola, right. Because it's an issue in the military. Number two, he is the CDF now. I don't know how he's feeling when he watched that debate where his name was mentioned and some allegations against him were portrayed. I don't know, but I want to believe he will find peace where he is and serve this country diligently. And because he's a professional soldier, we believe as a people and as a candidate will do that. And lastly, for us in Azimio, we strongly believe that public appointments must reflect the ethnic and regional diversity of the people of Kenya. We will always comment when we believe or we realize that that is not happening. We want to ask this regime that they consider in their appointments to ensure that while they're doing the appointments, the face of Kenya must be seen. Mm-hmm. They should try as much as possible, because as much as they say these are shareholders, even in shareholding, you don't have all shareholders from one tribe. No. The shareholders can also be from different tribes. So, Bwana Kagusha, Atandi says you represent Rigiji. Maybe when you meet him next weekend, just tell him that even in shareholding, you can have different shareholders for different...
No, Rigiji...
don't be provoked. I'm just looking at...
But some I would say, no, Rigiji is my friend, and I can tell you.
Fair enough.
Like this week.
I said it.
Like this
just
week.
hold on.
Like this week on Friday. I'll spend the whole day with him in Mukurweini.
Yes. Right. Just a moment. I'm looking at various reports from previous years, and like in 2015, the public service, the composition of the ethnic communities, 23.4% were Kikuyu, 16.3% were Kalenjin, 12.7% were Luo, 12.5% were Luya. There's another report by the NCIC on the commissions. 22.2% were Kikuyu. This was in 2016. And Kalenjin were 12.8%, Kamba 11.3% in that order. Then senior government positions, a report by then chairperson of the public service, Margaret Kobia, was saying that out of 416 senior management positions, 120 came from the Kikuyu community, which is 28%. Kalenjin 45, which was 10.8%. The Luo similar, 45, 10.8%. What I do not know is what would be the reason for that sort of disparity. But anyway, the statistics. Honorable Kagusha.
Also population.
Let me say this.
Yes.
First, on the issue of Rigiji, let me say, yes, indeed, he's my friend. I cannot purport or pretend to be speaking for him in any debate. But it's also possible that my thinking and his thinking would have a convergence at some point. I mean, it's not strange. And yes, indeed, I will host him for a whole day on Friday in Mukurweini. We will, in fact, go to 3 out of the 4 wards of Mukurweini on Friday, touring development projects.
Why don't you invite Raila also?
Right?
You host them together.
My friend.
Allow him to finish.
Maybe I should invite you to accompany. But when you're looking at this ethnic layout that you have given us here, it's also important to look at the population matrix in the country. I mean, if you are to subject this maybe even to the public, that only 22% of the population that is in the civil service that come from the Mount Kenya region, then you might even have issues with the Mount Kenya region people, because they might say, look, our population as a community is much higher than the population we have in civil service.
No, it's not.
And that's exactly what was also, if you had the debate that was going on in the funeral of Mukami's funeral, I mean, you had the deputy president say, if you go to Kamiti prison as well, you're also likely to find the same percentages also playing out. You're likely to find maybe even 22–25% of the people in Kamiti prison are also from the same region. If you go to City Mortuary here, again, you're also likely to find the same matrix also playing out, that a certain percentage, which is ordinarily higher than all these other percentages, is people from the region. Why? Because they are more than others. So, but having said that, I would want to say that we need to be alive to the fact that we need to be a balanced community. We need to have equal opportunities to all Kenyans of all walks of life. I would not in any way want to be favored myself as Kagushia because I come from my region. I want to work it out. I want to be a person who qualifies and meets the threshold that is required to deserve a position in the government or in the civil service or in whatever capacity in this country, be it corporate or any other. And by the way, I will also not favor you because you come from my region. I will expect to see the value that you have added to your life so that we can be able to give you a position depending on your capacity, your capability, objectively. Right. And so we cannot in any way entertain any tribe, any community being sidelined or being put aside because of their political inclination. Not at all. We must look at the professionals. We must look at people with their qualifications. We must look at what they are bringing on the table as a country. And that is the only way we can develop. And that is why wherever I work myself, and in fact, if you even look around, even my friends and the people whom I associate and relate with closely, you will find that I do that with people from across the divide and across the communities. Why? Because the tribal thinking and the tribal looking at things is so narrow, and it can bring you to not, let me say that. Because if you are looking at things every other day, every other time, using the tribal lenses, then you cannot progress. And so as a country, we must go beyond the tribal and the community matrix.
Here, Honorable Kagushia, but I just wanted to correct you that you're talking about proportions. According to the census of 2019, the Kikuyu community accounts for 17%.
I talked about Mount Kenya communities. I
am saying the Kikuyu community, because here I didn't refer to Mount Kenya communities, I refer to Kikuyu.
Even Merus are not.
17% of the population, Kalenjin 13.2%, Luhya 14.2%. If you compare that with the civil service, then you see there are a bit of disparities. But all the same, Honorable Atandi, as you conclude on this question about General Ogolla and where that takes us, why is it important anyway? Because, I mean, it's the first year of President William Ruto's tenure. Why would it be important to even explain the circumstance under which CDF Ogolla was appointed?
I think the president's caught when he appointed Ogolla to this position. And for us, I think this is the first time that Luo is holding such a position. So I think the president's caught. But coming back later to discuss the issues of Bomas and link them with General Ogolla. I think that is really an area where the president has lost it a bit. It needs to come out clearly, Sam, that this Bomas event where NSAC visited the IBC officers, and by the way, they were led by Kinyua. Kinyua is one I understand who led them, and Kinyua, I understand, still works in State House, and I think he's being made even the chairman of Kenya Commercial Bank. So I think these stories, I think what we need.
What do you mean
do,
he still works in State House? I thought he retired.
He's an advisor. He's a silent advisor, actually, and he's headed to be the chairman of Kenya Commercial Bank. And so I think
how did he lead them? I thought he only called Chairman Chebukati to tell him that a delegation was coming.
No. He was there in person.
He wasn't there.
He was there in person. Now,
he wasn't there.
Because I was in Bomas. He was there in person. So if the person who led this team to Bomas
No, let's be factual.
But I'm telling you, I was in Bomas at that time.
You saw him?
I saw him.
Just hold on. I have read the affidavit of former chairman Wafula Chebukati to the Supreme Court. I listened to him when he appeared before the tribunal that was hearing the removal of Irene Masit, and he said the delegation comprised of Hilary Mutyambai, General Ogolla, Kennedy Kihara, Kennedy Ogeto. Those four. The only person that spoke is Kennedy Kihara, according to Chebukati.
He was trying to save Kinyua, because Kinyua is supposed to be, he's still serving the interests of this government. So it's not supposed to be soiled. That's why, on all those affidavits, his name doesn't appear.
Or you know it as a fact?
I saw him. He was there. So what I'm trying to say is that these NSAC people, they were led by Kinyua. And Kinyua is in government and is even getting more appointments in government. So I think what I'm trying to say, Sam, is that this whole issue of Bomas, whether it happened or it didn't happen, is something that we need to move away from. And in fact, from where I sit, Ogolla is competently in office. And the fact that he was made Chief of Defense Forces, first from my constituency, is something that I celebrate. And it is something which we celebrate and we think is competent. And we believe that the president should really not continue to make such utterances that really spoil the reputation of Ogolla. Because you see, when you say that, there were many people that would have been appointed, yet he has been appointed, you are not giving the stature that he deserves. He will sit in an office, even his juniors would look at him like, you are not even the best. So I think that those statements were not very good. Personally, I celebrated the appointment of Ogolla.
No, but I thought the president meant he's the best to be a general.
No, he said there are many other people he would have appointed.
Yeah, and he said he singled him out because of his CV.
So I think my message is very clear, Sam, that this is not something which we should dwell on, but I think the president scored when he made Ogolla the Chief of Defense Forces. That is something which I must give him, because it is the first Luo to hold that position since independence.
Sam, I will not comment.
Secondly, I wanted to say, Sam, that this debate about tribal balancing in public service is something which we must continue to have. And I want to urge my friend, Honorable Koech, to allow everybody to discuss this issue. And I like the submission he has given us on the reasons why there are many people from his ethnic community who are getting positions in government. And I want to urge him to also try to balance some of us, even the Luo community.
You just said Ogolla.
No. In civil service.
Okay.
In civil service, because
it is still civil service.
Because our numbers are dwindling. Are you going to balance even people whose numbers are dwindling? Our numbers in civil service are dwindling.
Are there people that have been fired?
There's nobody to be fired, because they're not there. First of all, let us bring them on board first before they can be fired.
Sam, you must correct that, because you've just read out that it is 14% from the Luo community.
Yes.
You used the NCIC report. In the
10.8.
10.8, yeah.
That is for senior
And lastly, I wanted to say, Sam, that this issue, the Ministry of Energy is the reason I think this matter is coming up strongly. I think why your community is being castigated is because of Ministry of Energy. If you look at the Ministry of Energy, all parastatals are going to be headed by people from one ethnic community, even from chair of the board, CEOs. And I wanted to urge the CS for Energy, please advise him, let him not be too much ethnic.
But
other department ministries are doing very well, but on this one, If you go to Kenya Pipeline, the chairperson and the CEO are from the same ethnic community. That is not something that even Mwongozo rules guidelines allow. Why can you tell me? Are you going to tell me that for the chairman of the board and the CEO, those are the best people that exist in this country?
Honorable Atandi, the recruitment of political appointees, talking about chairpersons and members of the board, that is the purview of the politician in the president or the CS. But the recruitment of a CEO is a board matter. It's professional, it's competitive.
It's not professional. It's
How
not.
so?
But he has just said that they are trying to replace.
I did not say that. I just
trying to balance of their people.
No, let me tell
who are
you.
removed from government during that time.
Joe Sang was hounded out of office because of political reasons. He was there before. There is nothing new. What the board has just done is to reinstate him back because there were no charges against him. It was just political. On the other issues, and I really don't want to get petty.
There were charges, but he was acquitted.
I really don't want to. I really don't want to get petty and start all this political debate of this is my community and that my community. No, I want us to look at a holistic approach on how people are employed in the civil service. If people are competent and they have the qualification, like he said, that is a criteria that is used and they are picked. It doesn't matter from what community. It is just that by coincidence, a few from and why it is making news is because we've never had an opportunity to be in those positions. It makes news for someone to bite a dog, but not the other way around. That is why it is making news that you have 1 or 2, 3 colleges that are getting positions. It is just because they also have merited to be in those positions. And I want them to be looked at that from that perspective, from that lens, not the lens of, this guy is supposed to be here, this one is supposed to be there. I said, and the president did say yesterday, that if we were talking about shareholding, for instance, then some of these communities in the country will not be in any position. But he has deliberately had 43 counties represented in appointment of permanent secretaries and 45 counties in CAS's positions. So, that is the face of the country.
Okay, all right, but it's also true.
So as it may, because he talked about the Ministry of Energy, I just want to tell him, don't look just at the Ministry of Energy, look also at how the other architecture of other
But it's also true, Honorable Koech, that out of 51 PSs, 26 came from either Mount Kenya or Rift Valley communities.
But sometimes also, even anyway, look at the US, for instance, when you come in with a party, whatever party that you come in with, you have, first of all, to have a representation for the people who believe in your agenda. The people who believed in the agenda of William Ruto, so to say, are largely from Mount Kenya and the Rift Valley. So if that representation is there, but if you look at it, you've looked at it also on only permanent secretaries, but look at it holistically.
Basically, what you're saying, Sam, is that their party is only a representation of two communities.
No, I'm not saying
that. That's what you're saying, because you're saying if you're looking at people who can push your agenda, and that appointment largely reflects two communities, as Sam has aptly put it.
No, I spoke about regions. I didn't say communities.
Okay, regions. Two regions. Yeah. So let's say Mount Kenya and the Rift Valley region, which is a composition of so many communities. But look at the type of appointments. I think that even in rewarding loyalty, if you are to reward loyalty politically, then we should also take advantage of the diversity of the people of Kenya to reward loyalty.
But look at the cost. They have 4 cabinet secretaries.
That's fine.
Look at Nyanza, for instance. How many CASs do we have? How many PSs do we have? In fact, at the epicenter of the heart of security of William Ruto is Raymond Omolo.
4 cabinet secretaries from the coast. Who?
4 ministers, cabinet secretaries. Aisha Juma, okay? Mvurya. You have Governor Kingi, who is now the Senate, the Speaker of the Senate.
There are 2.
Yeah. So,
there are 2, not 4.
But look at that number.
Okay, there are 2, not 4.
Yes, the PS of Transport is from the coast.
He's not a cabinet minister.
But also,
there are 2 CSs.
Some is also important.
Just hold it. Let's listen to what the president said about the housing levy that has caused quite a bit of controversy in the country. And it is contained in the finance bill. In other terms, Honorable Kagushi will tell you that it may also be called the tax bill. Listen.
If I'm already paying for mortgage, why should I be forced to contribute to the fund?
Very good question. if you are paying a mortgage, nothing stops you as somebody who is employed. Yeah? Number one, contributing to this fund. Because it is not a tax. It is your money. What you are doing, you are playing your patriotic duty. Because out there, we have millions of young people who get out of school every year. It is our responsibility, me and you. Why is it our responsibility? Because they are the taxpayers that end up paying our salaries, right? And it is our duty also to see how we can help them in a small way. And you have said correctly that their problem is employment. Precisely. That's why I'm saying these 5 million characters, our children, getting out of school. Don't you think it is a decent thing? Don't you think it is the right thing to participate in an exercise that helps our country, our young people?
So he made quite a passionate a case for the housing levy, and I'll begin with you, Honorable Kagusha, because he is talking about it's a patriotic duty of Kenyans that are earning to support the vulnerable. But isn't that the exact same thing the tax we pay should be doing?
The president made a passionate appeal to Kenyans to help him to be able to introduce or to establish the kitty for the building of the housing project that he had promised during the campaigns, which the president seems to be totally sold out to. And I would want to call this one as a patriotic contribution, as the president said. And he actually made it clear that this money is going to be refundable if you wish to get the money back. This money can be transferred to your pension, it can be transferred to your spouse, can be transferred to your child, or even to any other person who qualifies to get a house. And all this he did to clarify to those people who may not be in need of houses, but they have been asked to make a contribution. And if you look at the contribution that is also being asked to be made is a 3%. And I'm also seeing a good side of it in the sense that there's also a 3% saving or rather addition from your employer. In fact, the people who should be crying here should actually be the employers, not even the employees, because if as an employee I am going to save 3% of my salary and my employer is somehow going to add me another 3%, then that basically means I have had an additional amount which has been given to me. But I'm also looking at this building contribution vis-a-vis the NHIF contribution, because what I'm seeing happening to most of the employees is that those people who are not earning so much are going to have a reduction in terms of their NHIF contribution, because it's also going to be a percentage. And so you're going to have a reduction on NHIF, then we introduce something a little bit more, which is in building. So I
mean a reduction. Currently it's 1.7%. It's rising to 2.75%.
Yeah, 2.7% of your salary. Before it was a block figure. Just do, for example, for a person who is earning 20,000 shillings. If you are to do that contribution for someone who is earning 20,000 shillings, do you know they were always paying how much? They were paying 1,700. But now, if you are going to be
they were not. They were not.
They were paying.
It was 1.75%, a minimum of 500 shillings.
No, the person earning 20,000 was paying 1,700.
No, they are not.
The 500 is for people who are not earning. It's not for people who are salaried.
Currently, they pay 1.7% of 20,000, which would have been 340, but the minimum is 500.
No, the NHIF contribution has been a block figure. It has not been a percentage.
It's not a block figure. If you look at...
it has not been a percentage.
It is a percentage capped at 1,700. Any person earning 100,000 and above, it doesn't increase.
Yeah, but now still look at it. If you're earning the 5, I mean, if you're paying the 500 and something, and the person earning $1 million is paying still 1,700, which blocks it, to 1,700. Yeah, but generally, what you're looking at is that if you're earning whatever amount you're earning, and you're going to make a contribution of 3%, and also you're getting an additional 3%, but this money still belongs to you. So what the president has done is only to request for you to help him to do the construction, and also this money will earn interest, and also it will be refunded to you. It will be available to you after 7 years. And if you look at what is happening with the employers, they are also going to be contributing the same for you, so that when you are redeeming this amount, it's going to be a little bit much more. Now, if you look at the economic impact of this, is that number one, it allows the government not to borrow so much to this agenda. It now allows you to borrow from within rather than to borrow from outside. If you're borrowing from external borrowing, then you're borrowing using dollars. And whenever there's dollar fluctuations, then you know what happens. The loan will increase automatically. Then this is also helping us to introduce new jobs for young people who are going to be employed. And I think the president did dwell so much on this and explained it very clearly. And it's something that many people needed this explanation, because many people did not understand, especially because it's probably one of the areas where there was too much misinformation. But I think with the clarification that was given last night, I think there's a bit of clarity now on how this issue is going to be handled.
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
How do you make a case for what he's saying it's patriotic duty, yet it's a mandatory contribution, a mandatory deduction, even affecting businesses, because now there's an extra cost?
Yeah.
How is that patriotism?
It is patriotism because we are all making a contribution to a kitty that helps the government to stay afloat. As you know, we have challenges. Is
patriotism mandatory or voluntary?
Patriotic duty can
mandatory.
I hope you don't also confuse patriotic and voluntary. If we were saying, patriotic is not voluntary and voluntary is not patriotic.
Okay, what I'm asking
patriotic is different from voluntary.
Can you be compelled to be patriotic to your country?
Definitely. Why not? But you are compelled to be patriotic.
Compelled by who?
Oh. By the law.
What about Andy? What are your thoughts about this?
Sam, I listened to the president yesterday night, and I was not convinced. Mm-hmm. First of all, like you have just asked, you cannot force me to give you money which I don't plan to give you. And you cannot force me to save money in a particular instrument when I have my own instruments of savings. Some Kenyans are saving. You are saving. I know you are saving. I'm also saving. I belong to 3 circles where I save. I also save through my pension scheme arrangement. So I have already looked at my payslip, and I know that this is what is left is just for me to survive with my family. So you cannot wake up one morning and tell me that, look, because I'm the president and I promise people houses, I must create a law that will force you to give money to a kitty which I am the one who knows how it's going to work. Mm-hmm. So I think this thing, however good it is, it is something which must be subjected to public participation. And as you have seen, Kenyans are not interested in this particular item. I want to urge my colleagues in Parliament that we should not force some of these things onto Kenyans. 3% of your basic salary. Why didn't you have it at 1%? Why did you choose 3% and not 1%? Mm-hmm. That is the first thing. And secondly, I don't know whether this government is serious. Is this government aware that the prices of commodities are going up each and every day? We are even seeing fuel prices going up. When fuel prices go up and cost of goods go up, where are Kenyans supposed to get money to service some of those increases, fluctuations? So the president is not taking into account some of these realities on the ground. And the president is assuming that as long as you're employed, you have extra money which it can just pick from you mm-hmm. by way of a law the way he wants. Already there are, income tax and all these tax which we are paying. We want to urge the government to restrict its fingers on those basic, mandatory taxes which we are paid. Find a way of using those taxes. Don't try to introduce another tax. For me, I think this is another tax. Even if you give another, whatever explanation you give, this is a tax. because you are going to compel me to pick the money from my payslip without my authority. So I think this is something which I want to urge Kenyans and MPs that we must reject it. This particular one, we must reject it. And it needs to be voluntary. If Mr. Kango wants to save using that instrument of housing, let him do it. But for me, I think I have 3 circles. That is the only place I want to save. If the government wants money to invest in housing, they can go and talk to those circles where I'm saving. They can have an arrangement with the circles where my savings are, and they can take that money from there, use it. They can also go to the pension schemes where my money is already there. They can borrow that money, use it to build those houses, and then refund the pension scheme and the circles, and then I will take profit from there, interest from there. But there's no way you are going to force somebody to interfere with their personal savings and personal pay slips to raise money for patriotism. Patriotism cannot be forced. It cannot be forced. So this idea is something which it cannot fly.
Okay. Honorable Koech, I know the government is in a tight corner that, raising revenue, raising resources is becoming a challenge. The president has said that he's committed to making sure that the debt appetite keeps reducing. But in as much as the economy is tough for the government, it's also tough for Kenyans. So when the government keeps coming to the same pockets, what are people supposed to be doing, even as Honorable Atandi calls for public participation?
Let me say, first of all, that after yesterday's president's show in most of your media houses, I felt like walking to Parliament to pass the finance bill. Let me tell you, Sam, and I must say this, we must be a country that thinks about other people. We should not be sort of a capitalist nation. He demonstrated. How have countries like Singapore, for instance, who we dream to be with, countries that we started off together from independence, where our GDP at that point were almost at the same level, how have they been able to succeed? It is because of deliberate effort from successive regimes and leaders. Number one, Singapore had the Central Provident Fund. Today, 80% of the citizens of Singapore have proper housing from where they were in the 60s with slums. That is where we must take this country. We have a population of 6 million Kenyans.
How did they do it?
It's a Central Provident Fund. So you know it's contributed. There's a kitty that is contributed. And now they started building apartments so that you can buy on a mortgage scheme, like what was being introduced.
So was it...
Just hang on. You will interrupt my thought chain.
Don't worry, I'll get it back there. But that system that you're talking about, was it mandatory or was deliberate?
It is mandatory. It is mandatory. It is, by the way, this is the only nation that we still engage on back and forth because we want to accommodate as many people to discuss. And I want to even correct my colleague that there was no public participation. Finance bill is subjected to public participation. That you should know, number one. So let me say this, Sam. What the president is proposing, or what Treasury is proposing, is a deduction. Countries have been able to succeed because number one, what we are saying is we want to remove the 6 million Kenyans who are living in deplorable housing conditions and give them some sort of respect and dignity on how they live. Number one is social housing. What the President and Treasury are suggesting in this finance bill is 3% of the basic salary. And he gave an example that, for instance, if you are earning 30,000, 3% of your basic salary of 30,000 is 900 shillings. The government is the employer is going to give a matching figure to support that. So you will have 1,800 per month. This is not a tax. This is a saving that you can exit in 7 years if you wish to do so. But between now and then, you must realize that there are only 700,000 Kenyans who are in the public service against a population of 50 million Kenyans. The entire nation, the entire balance of outside 700,000 bracket are the ones who are supporting those who are in the civil service. It is only fair, if we must build this nation, that we also must have a contribution. Now, how are we going to benefit from this housing fund?
Service.
700,000 are employed, okay? The rest of the nation are also paying taxes to support those who are in the civil service. It is not that, by the way, let me tell you, those who are in the civil service, there are many people out there who could be employed. We are just lucky that we are employed at that time. What this housing fund is going to do, before I even go to the other details, is number one, instantly you are going to create employment, because every house that is going to be constructed will employ at least 5 people. The plan immediately is to do 36,000 housing units. 36,000 housing units times 5. First of all, you've put directly on employment 180,000 Kenyans. That is directly. You've put in the engineers, you put in the plumbers, you put in the architects into that ecosystem that is creating employment and increasing our tax base. Number two, when you do that, when you also do that, all these houses are going to be standardized. Standardized so that anyone, all the doors are the same, all the windows are the same, the window frames are the same, the glasses are the same. You create a robust engagement, economic engagement, all the way to the grassroots. That is an extremely brilliant idea. Besides that, people will be owning decent houses. And what the president is saying is that if you do not feel like you want to contribute further after 7 years, you have an exit strategy. You can always claim your money because that is your money. This deduction is not by any way taxes. This is just the same way deduction that you will have done.
Then why not make it optional?
Why? Then how will you sustain how do you create a proper kitty if you are making it optional? The only way to do it
from the tax collector.
Which tax? You know, Sam, we are a country that only just want to demand from the government, but we are not saying what are we going to give to the government. You will demand good roads, you will demand water, you will demand good healthcare, you will demand employment, but you do not want to work in this framework.
If tomorrow the tax collected is not sufficient to build roads, are you going to come and say that we need to have a road levy from every person?
We are not saying that. We are not saying that. This fund is very good. I'm just trying to enumerate to you how this fund, first of all, is going to indirectly and directly employ so many people. And we should not be shy, by the way, Sam, of contributing. Why should we be very shy of contributing?
People are not shy. It's just because the economic times are difficult.
Yes, it is difficult, but the president is saying, let us look at it this way. Shortly, we will first of all, we found ourselves in a total mess. Like he said yesterday, what do we do as a country? When Kibaki came in, like I was saying, he made sure that by the time he left, 98%, 93% of our came locally from local revenues. That is exactly what the president is trying to do. First of all, we've reduced our borrowing last financial year, like I did enumerate last time here, from an anticipated 1.3 trillion by 350 billion Kenya.
You know, Honorable Kwech, what is interesting is that you're using the Kibaki example, but it was 93% of the budget was funded locally, and that was from local revenue in taxes.
That's what I'm saying.
Not on
housing levy.
Not on,
no, this is not this levy. First of all, Sam, is to give decent housing to many Kenyans out there. It will also reduce the cost of land in Nairobi. We want as many people as possible to occupy houses. Right now, even buying land in Nairobi is a magic.
A good idea, but
okay. So how do you bring prices down? And he even demonstrated and said there are houses that are being built in Soweto of Kibera. We are going to build many more houses. There's going to be employment.
Okay, I hear you, Honorable Kwech. Fred, you've been smiling all through. What tickles you?
You know, Sam, if there's something that this regime has failed to defend, is this 3% housing levy. They are calling it patriotism, voluntary, mandatory contribution, but Sam Matandi has put it plainly, it is a tax. The fact that it's compulsory, you know, maybe we need to look at the definition of a tax so that we arrive there. Any compulsory contribution levied on, government revenue by the government on workers' income is actually a tax. And we are just learning that this finance bill that Honorable Kwech want to run to Parliament to approve, I would advise Honorable Tandi also, as he runs to Parliament, Attorney runs with him and also reject it.
Correct.
Because this bill is a tsunami of taxes that is going to strangle every Kenyan. We have said that before as Azimio. We have said that. And I'll give you an example. Today, we are talking about 3%. Call it whatever you want to call it, tax, patriotic contribution, but it's going to affect the disposable income of the majority. That is the truth. At a time when people are suffering. Look at the timing, 7 years. By that time, they shall have been gone. You will leave Kenyans in the hands of who?
What do you mean?
No. Every regime has a contract of 5 years with the people. And you have to renew it if you perform well. But by this alone, the unions, some have complained. The unions, the workers, they have said, even though you have been trying to cushion Kenyans, but on this one, we are not with you. And how I wish that this regime, I looked at Honorable Ruto last evening in his interview. If there's something that he struggled to explain when the journalist asked these questions, is this. This 3%, and Atandi has also asked a question, why 3%? How did they arrive at 3%? Why not 1? Why not 2? And if you say it is compulsory, and then you call it patriotic contribution, and then the public who are working and whose payslips is being strangled by this 3% and many other taxes are asking, how about if I have an arrangement where with my bank I pay mortgage, or I have a house, or I have a home? Why should I be forced? And if I don't want to save because I have other modes of saving, why am I being forced to be patriotic on a specific issue that do not really affect me? I want to ask our members of parliament, Atandi, Kagushia, and Koech, and many others who are watching this show out there. Kenyans are tired. Their payslips have been strangled. This is a tsunami of taxes. It's going to affect me, you, and many, and even themselves. Please, let's review this issue. Let's have a way of effecting it in a manner that it does not affect the disposable income of the majority who are living below. Most of these public servants or servants, they don't earn much. When you raid their pay slips and introduce another form of deduction, then you also make them vulnerable. Please, Kenya Kwanza, please. Kenyans are crying that this issue should be addressed.
Okay, I hear you.
Sam, lastly.
Just hold on. I still have Atandi and Kagusha to speak to, but Honorable Coach, there's something you said that it is the rest of Kenyans that raise money to pay the 700,000 civil servants.
We pay taxes, yes.
But it is not the rest of Kenyans that raise money to pay those in the informal sector and the rest of the formal sector, because there's some 3.2 million Kenyans in the formal sector. 0.7 million are in the public service. So there's a whole 2.5 million that are in the private sector. Why are you forcing them?
That's what I'm saying. How will we support the other people who are... Everyone now is putting a perimeter wall on their house with electric fence and all these things because there's an increase in crime. There's a surge in crime. How as a country can we be responsible to make sure that unemployment does not become an issue? We must, responsible leaders, make sure that we introduce incentives and stuff like the housing fund that will be able to indirectly and directly employ our people and at the same time give them decent housing. If we don't check this, the slums will outgrow. We are talking about 6 million in numbers now. Shortly, we will hit 8 and 10 million. It will be untenable for the country. So crime, to reduce crime and to make sure that as a country, everyone is treated equally. It's a patriotic duty to make sure that those who are in employment are able to contribute into this kitty, because it is a contribution. It is not a tax, and I will insist it is not a tax. Let me also debunk something else, Sam, because I know you will cut me short now. This story of Kenyans are overly taxed. It was demonstrated yesterday. In fact, to our GDP, our tax is at 14%. We want to be like a country like Rwanda. Rwanda's tax regime to its GDP is 16%. In fact, if you allow me 1 second, if you look at the countries that are taxed compared to their GDP, the leading is Tunisia, is at 32.5%. of their GDP. You come to Seychelles. Kenya is so low at the bottom of the pyramid, we are doing 14%. The president is just saying, let us move it to 16%.
But did you know, Honorable Koech, Kenyans do not buy bread or pay rent with percentages. They use real money. So even if you had to say that...
But there are economic indicators, Sam, that we must also
That's
look at.
fine, and that's what I'm getting to. Even if you say that we are better than the others, the fact of the matter is Kenyans are hurting. The disposable income has reduced. The savings have reduced. Now you take away even more from their pay slips. What are they left with?
But are you saying in the same budget, have you seen the incentives that have been given also? Let us not also look at this small tax of this deduction of 3% against the general good that has been introduced in the budget. There is a bigger one that has been introduced. For instance, LPG, zero rated. Shortly, people will not be cutting firewood to light fires in their homes. Okay? You're talking about fish. Sam Atandi should be speaking about it.
What is the cost of LPG? The cost of LPG, 13 kg.
I don't know what it is now. I'm not sure.
It's almost 3,000. Sometimes you can get it at 2,500.
Yes.
That's the same amount you want to get away from the payslip. So even if you zero rate that gas,
yeah,
the Kenyan will have to forego that.
I've just said LPG amongst other ones. There's, now it's heavily taxed to import fish to this country.
You're not getting me. I am
importing
saying,
furniture, importing steel, importing clinker.
Majority of Kenyans do not import furniture into this country. They make it from their local area.
Yeah, yes.
And they use the
you're now being forced to buy locally.
And what?
Because it is going to be expensive to buy.
I'm saying majority of majority of Kenyans get it locally. They don't import like you do.
Yeah. Oh. No, I don't import.
He does.
So what I'm saying is, you're saying that LPG will be zero rated.
Yes.
Which is good. I mean, it's exciting, maybe. But a 13 kg LPG cylinder will cost you 3,000 shillings or more. You come and tell me that if you have a salary of 100,000 shillings, we want your 2,500 shillings. So you take away the 2,500 shillings, the same amount that I need to buy LPG, but you're telling me that
we must learn to be also a saving country. This is in 7 years, and like I said, is still your money. You can decide to liquidate that money in 7 years and go away with it.
So for 7 years, don't buy LPG. Honorable Kagusha, public participation has been spoken about by Honorable Atandi.
And we have said no.
I remember the creation, the establishment of positions of Chief Administrative Secretary. There was public participation conducted by the Public Service Commission. And they came back and said that 41.8% are in support of the positions. 58.2% were opposed to the positions. Then they went ahead to make an argument about the observations, the reasons for opposing, the reasons for supporting, and eventually they recommended to the president create these positions against the wishes of the public participation. So even if you have to have public participation on the finance bill, how sure are Kenyans that their voices will be listened to and reflected in the final conversation?
No, public participation is key and it's important. It's not only key, but it's also constitutional. Is in accordance to our Article 10 of the Constitution that we must subject every decision that we make as a government to the public. And the public must own and accept the direction that the government is taking. Having said that, I want to say the issue of the building tax.
No, you haven't answered my question.
Yeah.
I am asking, how will the public participate? Because people have spoken, the unions have spoken. I've not had anyone coming out and saying that we're in support of the housing levy apart from the political class, and especially from Kenya Kwanza.
Kotu was supported.
What we have,
the unions.
What we have as we are talking. What we have as we are talking officially, I can say this, people have done their memorandums. So there are people who are doing their memorandums in support. There are people who are doing their memorandums against. And so what will be looked at is what are the reasons and what are the issues that have been raised. And one of the things that the government can do is to address some of the issues that are raised by either the employers or the employees, the unions, and also the labor organizations and any other interested parties. Sometimes people do not just say we don't want. You know, the kind of memorandums that people do are usually different from the kind of political rhetoric sometimes you'll have from the political players. Because for them, when you get down to pen and paper, then you have to put reasons and you have to be much more factual in terms of the issues that you are putting down. So what you'll find is the people who do make their memorandums in terms of public participation will highlight a number of issues that they may not agree with or how they think they will impact the economy and their salaries and such. And what is likely to happen is that the government looks at those things and then may adjust different things to ensure that the issues that have been raised by different players and different people are addressed, at least as many as possible.
So if majority of the memoranda that you receive are opposed to the housing levy, what will you do?
And what they do, and this is what I'm saying, you're not just looking at the quantitative, we're also looking at the qualitative aspect of these memorandums. In the sense that when a memorandum is done, it may not just say no. You see, a memorandum will not come and say we are not in support. No, they will come and say we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever number of challenges with this proposal. And most of them, you'll be very surprised, even have their own recommendations on how it is supposed to be done. And that's why you find that sometimes a proposal has been done by government, but when you look at the final end of what is now coming to Parliament, you find that there are adjustments here and there to take care of the issues that have been raised by public. So a government cannot be blind or cannot close its ears and eyes from what the public is saying. And what you're also going to find is there are also people who are going to put their memorandums in support. So you are going to be weighing between the ones who are putting in support, why, with the reasons. Then you look at those who are saying no, with reasons. And that is why I'm saying this cannot be quantitative. It is much more qualitative. You're looking more at the issues which have been that have been put together by these people. Look at the discussion that was there last night.
Let's split the minute with the Honorable Atandi as we close. So then with all these views, what happens? What assurance are you giving Kenyans that whatever it is, their wishes will be carried?
Sam, first of all, I think you're being overambitious in this debate. You're expecting my friends here to answer questions which could not be answered by Ruto yesterday. I think you need to stop being overambitious. He did answer.
Why do you say so? I thought they answered.
They are not answering. They can't get answers. Their boss could not get answers. Why would they get answers?
What is it?
But what I wanted to say, Sam, is that two things. The first one is I wanted to react to the issue which has been introduced by my colleague here, Honorable Koech, that the question of tax to GDP, and is comparing Kenya with Tunisia and Seychelles. And I think Ruto spoke about it yesterday also. Sam, let us be honest. You know, the structure of these economies, structure of an economy like Seychelles, that does not grow anything, economy that is based purely on imports. If their taxes are high, then there's a good reason for that. If you go to Seychelles today, you cannot even, a little tiny hotel, that, you know, you spend 3,000 shillings in Kenya, you spend 20,000 shillings in Seychelles. These are small, tiny, weak economies which you cannot even use to compare with our economy. And so the question that we need to be overtaxed, because our African countries are overtaxed, is neither here nor there. And I think we should not even use that as a basis to raise taxes, because these economies are different. We are an economy that really needs to work on working on fundamentals like agriculture.
Okay.
Yeah, Seychelles, there's no agriculture. Secondly, Sam, you remember yesterday night, Ruto said that, you know, in the next 5 years, 10 years, 60% of the population will move to urban centers. I think if you heard him. And I want to correct him. And I think this is really the reason why devolution is not working, why it's killing devolution. If we created devolution to help us stop people from migrating to urban centers, and the president believes that people should be coming to urban centers, it means that there's something wrong with this thinking. We are supposed to work on our counties, develop our counties so that people don't come to urban centers. So I want to correct him.
And there are urban centers in the counties?
There are, but you see, if urban center, if Siaya, for instance, is developing, there will be no pressure in Nairobi slums. People in the slums will go back to Siaya or wherever.
Okay.
So I think we need to, first of all, ask the president to focus on devolution, because devolution is dying. He's not sending money to counties. He's not working on it, and I think this focus is so that cities can grow up, slums can grow up in cities.
Okay.
And lastly, my last challenge to this type of fund is that, we know the experiences we've had with NHIF and NSF. We have weak governance structures. As long as we are not sorting out governance issues around these institutions, then nobody will trust any government agency to collect money on their behalf, to invest and to return that.
Okay.
And especially now that we know that this government is, if you are corrupt, you are a best candidate for this government. Corrupt people have come to this government. Even care is chaired by somebody who has corruption issues. This government is
But he hasn't been convicted by any court.
This government is hiring corrupt people. And Kenyans, please don't give this government even one bomb, because they will eat it.
Okay, all right. Thank you all. We are out of time. Do we have
closing remarks?
Do we have a minute to take feedback on Twitter at Citizen TV Kenya, at Sam Gituku, on what Kenyans are saying this morning? Honorable Lilian Sioi, handshake between the government and opposition is crucial for fostering cooperation in the best interest of the nation. Leaders must set aside their differences and work together towards shared objectives. Let us prioritize unity for the betterment of all. Engineer Lazaro, elevation of talented fighter jet pilot General Ogola to CDF shouldn't be politicized to look like big favors to the Luo community. That's toxic politics. Let's stop demoralizing our patriotic soldiers by politicizing their chain of command. All right. Okelo Mwalimu, most poor Kenyans won't mind about who holds which position in government as long as their well-being is catered for. They'll allow you to appoint all CSs from one tribe. The problem arises when appointees are used as conduits for emptying public coffers for selfish gains. MC Rumaz, Kenyans had a lot of expectations in Kenya Kwanza government, but nobody is talking about Mama Mboga and Boda Boda anymore. The prices of essential commodities are skyrocketing. They shouldn't add more taxes. And Royal Donable, how is it a patriotic duty if it is a tax deduction? Because in all honesty, however you try to dress it, it's a tax deduction. I think we need a tax lesson. No, I can give you an opportunity because we're out of time. Honorable Tan, even if you speak, they won't hear you because your mic is already off. And I want to thank you all. Honorable John Kagusha from Ukureli. I see faces of dissatisfaction, but I wish you had more time. Sam Atandi and Nelson Koech, as well as Fredo Kango for making time for us. Up next is Sporty Monday. Willis will be here. And he said that today we should not speak in bright tone because of Arsenal. I don't know what it means, but he may end. My name is Sam Gituku. See you some other time.